It's been a year and a half into the Russia-Ukraine war, but the two countries still remain engaged in a crisis that shows no signs of nearing its end. On 24th February 2022, the Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that Russia had decided to quote-unquote conduct a special military operation in Ukraine.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Since then, the war has already caused more than $143 billion in damage to Ukraine, as per the country's sources. Not to forget the 6.3 million refugees, thousands of casualties, and the trail of destruction. The ordeal has turned into a deadlock with neither side being able to reach a conclusion. It is not a world war, but it definitely has the world's attention. From migration to economic recession, the war has impacted institutions and people all around the world. And to solve this deadlock, more powers have been dragged into the picture in an attempt to somehow facilitate a solution. One such power is India. India has consistently abstained from voting both at the UN General Assembly and the UN Security Council. But unlike the 31 other countries which were also a part of the abstention brigade on 23rd February 2023, India's reasons are far more pragmatic. To understand India's pragmatic stance, which has been referred to as sitting on the fence, we must first understand the history between India and Russia. What is so special about this relationship that even the public sentiment in India is aligned with its foreign policy? The India-Russia partnership goes way back in history to 1955, when India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and the Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev broke new grounds. But it was the year 1971 which was a turning point in their relations. Back then, Russia had a much larger territory, greater ambitions, and was altogether known by a different name. The Soviet Union was competing with the USA for dominance, and the struggle transpired through propaganda campaigns, espionage, and even space race. During the era of the Cold War, a major episode took place in present-day Bangladesh, which had become a violent theatre on the international stage. On 25th March 1971, a military operation was launched by West Pakistan against the people of East Pakistan under the pretext of pacification. It was named Operation Searchlight, but there was no light, just hell on earth. The military crackdown turned into a genocide, making it the largest since the Holocaust. As the killing spree continued, millions of Bengali refugees came pouring in through India's borders. The then Prime Minister Madam Indira Gandhi knocked on the doors of the United Nations and engaged bilaterally and multilaterally seeking permission to intervene, but to no avail. The global powers even rallied their naval vessels against India. America dispatched the US Task Force 74 of the 7th Fleet into the Bay of Bengal. The UK dispatched its aircraft carrier HMS Eagle in the Arabian Sea. The show of military force was meant to intimidate India with a pincer attack. When the entire world was charging at India, Madam Gandhi had no other option left. She sent out an SOS to the Soviet Union. India invoked the Indo-Soviet Treaty of Peace, Friendship and Cooperation, which was signed on August 9, 1971. The Soviets quickly countered by sending cruisers and destroyers from Vladivostok and encircled the British and American fleets, preventing them from entering into India's territorial waters. With any foreign intervention out of the way, India retaliated to Pakistan's Operation Chengiz Khan, marking its official entry into the Indo-Pakistan War on 3rd December 1971. In a matter of 13 days, India ended the war after the Pakistan military signed the Instrument of Surrender on 16 December 1971. A new nation called Bangladesh was born.
ফাঁসি কাস্টে আসামি দিয়ে আমাকে নিতে পারে নাই যে রক্ত দিয়ে আপনারা আমাকে একদিন জেল থেকে বার করে নিয়ে এসেছিলেন এই রেসকোর্স ময়দানে আমি বলেছিলাম আমার রক্ত দিয়ে আমার দেশ তোমার দেশ বাংলাদেশ বাংলাদেশ আমার দেশ তোমার দেশ বাংলাদেশ বাংলাদেশ স্বাধীন করো বাংলাদেশ স্বাধীন।
And a new bond between India and Russia was forged. Little did they know, it was just the beginning. Later down the line, the two countries collaborated on defense, civil nuclear energy, as well as space travel. Today, after more than 50 years, the two countries continue to be reliable time-tested partners, even withstanding turbulent times such as the disintegration of the Soviet Union in 1991. In an interview with an Italian journalist, Madam Gandhi even said that a third world war could have erupted had the US dared to fire a single shot on the Indian fleet. She was referring to the Soviets and their resolve. Even though both countries don't exactly share similarities in their governance or culture, or most things for that matter, there is a mutual respect and admiration that runs deep within. As for the Indians, they never forget their friends, especially the one and only friend who helped them when the entire world stood against them. Even though Russia is India's longest standing and most trusted partner, India has not refrained from condemning the wrong. When the images of the killings in Bucha surfaced on the internet, India unequivocally condemned the killings at the UN Security Council. It even called for an independent investigation into the incident. But in the SCO summit in Samarkand in September 2022, India demonstrated something that erased all doubts. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi said to his Russian counterpart that quote unquote this is not an era of war, point blank, from one world leader to another. Interestingly, this
एक्सेलेंसी मैं जानता हूं कि आज का युग युद्ध का है नहीं.
meeting took place on 16 September 2022, just one day before Modi's birthday. In the same conversation, Putin even mentioned that he knew about Modi's birthday, but according to the Russian traditions, they don't congratulate someone in advance. Now, relations between nations are not built in the same way as relations between people, let alone world leaders. It's a leader's duty to safeguard his nation's interests first and then establish international relations if there is any place for it. But when that happens, the relationship blooms into such a newfound friendship. The exchange at the SCO summit spoke volumes about the relationship between the two leaders and their respective countries. If you look carefully in his opening remarks, Modi didn't even refer to his notes. He didn't need to. He showed that India is a good friend who understands the Russian viewpoint but is also not afraid to speak reality. The Russian envoy to New Delhi reiterated the India-Russia ties, stating that they will closely listen to India. And the West hailed Modi as a powerful and influential voice on the global stage. When it started, it was evident that a tug of war was bound to happen. In less than 40 days, diplomats and leaders from a slew of countries, including the US, the UK, Russia, China, Japan, and Mexico, made a dash for India, expecting Indian participation. Any country could have succumbed to the strong arming pressure. Luckily for India, the timing couldn't have been better, because in New Delhi, a rockstar career diplomat was patiently lying in wait. External Affairs Minister Subramanian Jaishankar was as vocal as they come. With Jaishankar leading from the front, India took the center stage amid the geopolitical chaos. He clarified India's position on the oil trade and defended India's energy security, but also called out Europe's hypocrisy for purchasing gas from Russia. For the first time in a very long time, the government of the day upheld the values and the sentiments of its people. India's message was loud and clear. It is not a unipolar world anymore where it's either the American way or no way, nor is it a bipolar world where a country has to join either one of the two axes. But India's diplomatic stance also declared its intent. The Western constructs of alliances and axis were thoroughly rejected. So were transactional relationships, as in a quid pro quo. You help me with this situation and I will return the favor in the future. India replaced these old-time concepts with an India-first approach while simultaneously trying to establish a rules-based international order. Slowly but surely dawned upon the rest of the world that India's position on the war, as half-hearted as it seemed at the beginning, was much needed. In the beginning days of the conflict, India was urged to pick a side and not sit on the fence. But India characterized it differently. It steered clear of any direct participation in what looked like a political campaign for the war. Given India's troublesome neighborhood and its long history of conflicts, war was the last thing the country wanted to dabble in. Instead, it focused on adjusting to the new developments triggered by the war. And it certainly worked in India's favor. India produced the major growth amongst economies. The IMF's managing director Kristalina Georgieva proclaimed India a bright spot in the otherwise darker times.
India deserves to be called a bright spot.
The India-first approach had clearly worked. Its exemplary policy soon drew attention from other world leaders. Now more than ever, the world needs India, a country which can not only look after itself to avoid a transactional relationship, but also with no inclination towards either the West or the East for that matter, a country which can play a potential peacemaker. Why? Well, firstly, because the nuclear cards are back on the table. The Kremlin inked a deal with its firm supporter Belarus to deploy Russian tactical nuclear missiles, some of which have been received by Belarus. Russia even went on to say that this move will not violate nuclear non-proliferation agreements, as the US has been doing the same in Europe and other allied countries. But this is not the first time that the Russian nukes have come into the picture in the ongoing war. Guess who intervened then? India. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said in an interview that India and China prevented a nuclear war from happening.
We urged, and I think successfully, other countries that might have a little bit more influence with Russia these days, like China, but also other countries like India, to engage him directly about their absolute opposition to any use of nuclear.
The CIA chief William Burns reiterated along those same lines. But secondly, and most importantly, unlike China, India has leverage. It is a strategic partner of both America and Russia. Just like the United States and India convene as the Quad, India and Russia also collaborate at the BRICS, G20 and the SCO summits. It's been more than a year and a half since the war started. If it doesn't reach a conclusion, it could be sitting on the list of the longest waged wars in modern history. If it doesn't reach a decisive conclusion, the situation would be the same, but they won't exactly call it a war. It will be known by a different name altogether.